what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and today is going to be bookish content. For today's video, we're going to go over the 4 books that I read in April. I also started 2 others, which I'll probably briefly go over just for the hell of it. But I only completed 4 books. 1 was a poetry book. 1 was a manga, 2 were comic books or graphic novels, and I know like some people out there kind of think manga, graphic novels, comics are the same thing, so what have you. But without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So the first book I started in February and I completed it in March, and that is, I don't even remember what it's called. It's Crank by Ellen Hopkins. This is about a girl who discovers, I think crank is supposed to be slang for meth. She discovers meth, she starts using, and she goes down a rabbit hole because now she is addicted. It's told in the form of free verse poetry, and it's basically like a warning to teens to not do drugs. Like that's the moral of the story. But I was intrigued by it. Like, I remember kids back in the day reading this. Like, for some reason, like my generation or my age group, maybe it was just my specific friend group, we were all obsessed with reading like contemporary, like we were all obsessed with reading YA contemporary, but it was like dark shit like this. Like, main characters, they had to be like addicted to drugs, they had to be thinking about suicide. Like, this book is the epitome of the whole go ask Alice, 13 reasons why, by the time you read this I'll be dead phase. Having said that, I liked these books when I was like 13, 14 years old. I've recently reread some of those books and hated them. I'm not a fan of this one either. The main message is don't do drugs, and it does a good job of showing why you shouldn't do drugs. I think personally I'm not a fan of certain styles of free verse poetry. Like, just there's some free verse that doesn't read like poetry to me. It just reads like a regular novel. I think that's my huge thing with poetry. Like, I know for a lot of people poetry's hit or miss, and I'm like one of those people where it's kind of, a lot of the times it is a miss for me. Some of the poems, like the style I like she would have, you know, one verse here, another here, and depending how you read it, because the lines were kind of like this, you could read this line first, this line second, then keep going like this, and it's one poem. But then you could read this stanza, it's not really a stanza, but like you could read this column by itself and it says one sentence, but then this column would say a completely different sentence. I think it's really clever when authors do that, and I understand that it is very hard to do, and there's certain instances where I think this author did a really good job with that. But I think what truly bothered me was just the constant like mention of crank, which I know sounds really weird because that's what the book is about, but like there's just so many poems that felt repetitive, because this book is like, it's a literal square. I got it from the library, so I don't have it anymore, but it's like a literal square, but like a brick. Like, it's this big. It was like almost 600 pages, and I truly think it could have been like 300 and she would have gotten her point across, because I was just getting annoyed with the constant mention of crank. And it's not like she would create some new metaphor, new simile, what have you. It was just the constant line of, but crank took over me, but crank is bad. It got old really fast. I think my other gripe with the poetry is oftentimes it came off as cliched. Some of these characters came off as stereotypes, which is, it kind of guts me to say, because if you read like the about the author section, this book is not based on a true story, but she took aspects of her real life and put it in this fictionalized story. I think it was her daughter who was addicted to meth. I don't know, like the side characters especially just felt too like stereotypical for me. There was one point where she kind of like teased at the main character getting better, and then she didn't. And I understand like recovery, especially from meth, is not linear in the slightest. Like, oftentimes people can't recover from meth because meth is literally damaging your brain. But I thought the tease was kind of, I don't want to use the word tease, that seems like disingenuous, but the hint was unneeded, especially because this is a trilogy. Like, there's 2 other books. And then at the end of the day, my biggest gripe was that I did get bored. I don't like being bored when I read my books, so yeah, this one was kind of difficult to get through, not because it was a hard subject, because it's a hard-hitting subject, but because I don't really like how it was written. Despite some of the forms of the poetry being cool to look at, like the actual writing got old. Was not a fan. So I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars. So next we're going to move on to the manga. That is Death Note Black Edition Volume 2, aka Death Note Volumes 3 and 4. The story by Sugumi Oba and the art by Takashi Obata. This has been around for a while now, but if you don't know what this story is about, it's about a Shinigami, which is the god of death. He has a death note, he's bored, drops it into the human world, and a bored human picks it up, finds out that when you write someone's name in it, they die. And he decides to use this book to become a god, essentially. I have nothing like major to add because again, I can't really talk about this without spoiling the first book. Elle and Light are still incredibly smart, all the twists and turns. I'm absolutely flabbergasted. Like, I can't imagine being able to write something like that. It still keeps me on my toes, despite, like, knowing what's coming. Like, if you've missed me say this in other videos, like, I've seen the anime twice, so I know what's coming, and yet I'm still excited. The one thing I forgot how fucking dumb and annoying Misa is. She had a few moments where I did underestimate her. She was smarter than I thought. But then had other moments where she's just fucking stupid. Like, Light warns her, don't come anywhere near me, we'll be suspicious. And then she keeps following him. Sure enough, like, shit happens. Girl, I will say though, she's not as annoying as the anime because now I don't need to hear her voice when reading the manga. And that is great, so 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read is The End of the Fucking World by Charles Forsman. This is a graphic novel. This is about a 17-year-old psychopath boy. He decides to run away with his girlfriend, and it's their adventures from there, and it is now a Netflix TV show. I've seen the Netflix TV show before reading this book, and the show is actually what made me want to read this. So I was really excited for this, but unfortunately, it is one of the instances where the TV show is better than the book. The TV show adds a lot more nuance to these characters than this book does. In this book, they are pretty one-dimensional. The main boy, his whole personality is just being a psychopath that protects his girlfriend. There's nothing to it. He doesn't grow, he doesn't learn. Same thing with the girlfriend. Her name's Alyssa. The whole point of Alyssa's arc is just to love James. Nothing more. Pretty boring. And yeah, that's essentially like why I didn't like the story. There was just no nuance to the characters, and I was really disappointed because I do love the TV show. So I was disappointed to read this. I did only give this 2.5 out of 5 stars. I will say though, I did kind of like the end. So after there's the part where like the show ends, and then there's like one more chapter which is not included in the TV show at all. I did kind of like how that ended. Like I liked it. How do I say this? I didn't like the writing, I liked the imagery. Like the last panel is like, I like that graphic imagery because of what little we do know about Alyssa. I think it fit her perfectly. Felt grungy in a sense. The artwork does remind me of Charlie Brown, like the Peanuts comics, which was really fun to go through, and it did make me like reminiscent for the Peanuts comics, and like I kind of want to go back to reading those. But yeah. Essentially, this is the book you read when it's like December 29th and like you still have 5 books left on your Goodreads goal. This one, because I read this in one sitting. So then the last book I completed in March is actually another Charles Forsman graphic novel. That is I Am Not Okay With This. This is also a Netflix TV show, but I did not watch that TV show despite hearing the raving reviews about it. So I went into this cold. This is about a 15-year-old girl who doesn't really have a lot of friends, but she does have this power with her head, with her mind. She can essentially make things explode with her mind. And then not only that, but you kind of just see the trials and errors of growing up. This book is a really weird one because I was actually really enjoying this at first. Before I get ahead of myself, I do want to let you know our main character Sydney is the only one who has any sort of nuance to her. Like the side characters are incredibly one-dimensional. Because you know, some side characters and stories have arcs. The ones in here don't. But even then, despite being the only one with nuance, she did not have as much nuance as I would have hoped. For example, like when it comes to her like head power, I mean, she makes things explode with her mind. But you don't really explain that. You don't really like show that until the last minute. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Despite all that, the first 100 pages, I was actually vastly enjoying this book. I could not put it down. I wanted to know what happened. I had no idea how it was going to end. What was it going to do? But then there's the part of the story that takes a turn. She does a bad thing to an arguably very bad person, but she feels this immense guilt. But unfortunately, that's not really explored. I thought, so how long is this book? It's almost 180 pages. I thought those last pages, like where the turn happened, I thought they were incredibly rushed. Like just one moment she's fine, the next moment she commits this bad thing, and then the next page it's just she's wallowing in guilt and depressed but that's not really fleshed out. It wasn't shown to us that she was sad. It was literally the narrator being like, Sydney is upset. This guilt eventually leads to something, to the ending, and the ending just didn't sit right with me. And like, just my one, like, the big gripe about her emotions not being explored is that I didn't really understand her motives. Like, if anything, I thought she was overthinking it. I thought she was overreacting, which is a very harsh word to use considering what happens at the end. But it's because her emotions, her depression, her mental health wasn't fleshed out. Like, it was just told to us, and then we had to, like, watch her just be completely different. I feel like I had whiplash from how fast she changed, which, again, like, I guess I can understand because, yeah, in real life, you witness something bad, it's going to change you, but I don't, it reads weird in a book, because I want to know her motives. I want to know why she's doing this. Like, I truly think she was overreacting, which is bad because of how the book ended. Like, it's supposed to punch you in the gut, but it didn't punch me in the gut. The ending also leads me to my opinion about her, like, mental power, because it wasn't really used a lot in the first part of the book that I did enjoy. Like, I was almost wondering what was the point, and like, it wasn't brought up until it was necessary for the end, which I didn't really like that. Like, that first 100 pages barely talked about, no foreshadowing in the slightest, and then you get to like those last 50 pages and suddenly it's everywhere, and it's like, where did this come from? Because you told us in the first 100 pages how scary this was, how important it was, but we weren't really seeing it until it was too late for me to feel anything. So, like, I wanted that power to be fleshed out. I mean, she can make things explode with her mind. Like, why weren't we, like, seeing that more? Like, I feel like the author could have added a few instances where she made, like, a pop can explode, where she made a piece of candy explode, like a bag of chips explode. Like, I'm not talking about she should go, like, kill people from page 1, just like the little things, just to build up to what eventually happens. Too long, didn't listen. It wasn't important until it was. And like I said, speaking of the end, the way this book ends didn't sit right with me. I think it is a weird, I don't want to say it's a weird message to send to kids, because quite honestly, I'm not sure what Charles Forsman was trying to say with his story. I'm not sure what the moral was. Not that every story needs to have a moral, but like, sometimes you know there is one, you just can't figure it out. So I guess the only thing I can say, given what happens in the book, at least the last page of this book gives you phone numbers so you can reach out to someone if you need help. Because other books end this way and don't give you jack shit. At least this one is trying to do something. Because of all my, like, mixed feelings here, I did end up giving it 2.75 out of 5 stars. I think I'm still going to watch the TV show and even react to it on the channel, because a lot of people love the TV show and were actually upset it did not get renewed again. A lot of reviews were saying that they were, like, people who saw the show first then read the book were shocked that this is the source material for a show that good, and others were saying they read the book first, hated it, but gave in, loved the show. So I'm gonna watch the show anyway. I just don't know when that will be, but yeah, weird feelings about this book. 2.75 out of 5 stars. And that is it for the books I read, but I mentioned earlier that I started 2 books. The first book I started was The Arabian Nights by Anonymous. This version is the Barnes & Noble edition, and this was translated by Sir Richard F. Burton. It is dusty because I haven't picked it up in a while. I'm only 2 stories in. I didn't realize how hard, I don't want to say this, it's a hard read, but it is difficult. I do need to take my time when reading this. It's not a fast-paced read. I like the 2 stories so far, and that's really all I can say. This is going to be my big book of the year. And then another book that I started in March, I ended up finishing it like yesterday, but we're going to save it for my April wrap-up. But that is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This takes place in a world where there is this program called Deathcast. They call you the day you're going to die to let you know. They just don't know how you're going to die. So Mateo Torres and Rufus Emeterio get the call. They join an app called Last Friend app. That's how they meet, and they are trying to live their end day together and go on adventures. I think by the time March ended, I was like halfway through it, and I was really enjoying it. But in the risk of spoiling anything for my April wrap-up, I'm just going to stop there, because it was a really good book, but I don't want to get into too much detail about it until next month. And that is it for the end of this video. It's very fast-paced, a very unfortunate reading month, because I'm realizing I only liked 1 book. But what can you do? Hopefully April's gonna be better, and I'm saying that when we're halfway through the month. But yeah, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe, y'all know the drill, and without further ado, I'm gonna peace out and I'll see you guys later. Ciao tutti.